between my small office and my house, roughly 2 miles away, spurred by frustration with some unfinished work tasks. After tinkering with it for about an hour, I swapped my jeans and work shirt for shorts, a t-shirt, sneakers, and a headband, and set off. My plan was to jog home to retrieve some paperwork, maybe 20 pages. When I was about half a mile from home, I spotted a guy about 200 yards ahead, an uncommon sight, since this path was mainly used by me and rarely by others. Leading directly to my house and bordered by a cliff at the back, he appeared to be cutting through toward the back of my house. Hastening my pace, I turned a corner to get a better look. He was at the back patio door, which to my surprise was unlocked. Pausing to consider what I had witnessed, I recalled that my wife Alice was working from home that day. Racing to the door, I found it locked, but naturally I had the key and used it. Silently sliding open the patio door, I peered inside. The kitchen, where Alice usually worked, was empty, but her work materials and laptop were sprawled across the table. Faint sounds emanated from upstairs, likely from the dining room adjacent to the kitchen. I kept a baton, reminiscent of those used by old-fashioned patrol officers, which had once belonged to my grandfather. It was both a tool of protection and a sentimental keepsake. Clutching the baton, I stealthily ascended the stairs. The door to the master bedroom was shut, with muffled noises emanating from within. Gripping the handle, I cautiously pushed it open. Imagine my shock. The runner's attire lay discarded on the floor as he poised to mount my wife, who was completely unclothed. Approaching the bed, I administered a swift strike to the man's rear with the baton, resulting in a resounding slap. He yelped, clutching his rear, while Alice stared wide-eyed, her arms, legs, and gaze all widened. She uttered something unintelligible. It dawned on me that this intruder was none other than her boss, Simon Green. Rolling away from Alice, he rose from the bed, nursing his injured rear. "Hold on, I was invited," he protested. Glancing at Alice, I was met with absolute silence. Simon issued a threat, asserting, "You'd better back off, or I'll take it from you and give you a smacking." Standing undressed in my bedroom, he exuded confidence, yet he scarcely knew me. And I him. What he didn't realize was my proficiency in tennis, particularly my formidable backhand. Smirking at him, I detected a flicker of agitation. With a roar, he lunged at me from about 6 feet away. Swiftly, I delivered a backhand blow to his face. Caught off guard, he failed to evade it. The baton struck his forehead on the right side. I had aimed for his cheek, but his slight downward movement caused the misalignment. Collapsing like a sack of bricks, he remained motionless. As I gazed down at him, I glanced at Alice. She appeared to be in a trance, her eyes had a glassy look, and drool dribbled down her chin. Surveying the room, I spotted a cell phone on the dresser, positioned upright with the screen facing the bed. That idiot had recorded everything. Grabbing the phone, I flipped it to access the dial pad and called. "Emergency, what's your emergency?" "My name is Tim Jenkins. I'm at 12 Arbor Circle. An intruder attacked me in my bedroom. I defended myself. He's hurt, possibly seriously. And my wife, she's, I don't know, maybe on medications. She's conscious, but not responsive. We need help right away. Sir, if you're armed, please disarm yourself. We'll approach cautiously. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand. I'll wait in the front yard." As sirens wailed, I descended the stairs, phone still in hand. Placing the baton on the sofa, I stepped outside. Standing in the front yard, arms at my sides, I watched as a police car arrived, followed by an ambulance. 2 officers, a man and a woman, emerged, neither drawing their weapons. The woman, appearing to be in charge, addressed me. "Are you Mr. Jenkins?" "Yes, they're upstairs. Follow me." I turned and re-entered the house, the officers trailing behind me. Leading them to the bedroom, I stepped aside. The door was ajar. Alice lay on the bed, vacant-eyed. Green remained motionless. A female officer knelt by Green, checking his pulse and instructing another officer to summon paramedics. Turning her attention to Alice, she asked, "Ma'am, are you all right, ma'am?" No response. As the paramedics arrived, I stepped back, allowing them to attend to Green. Another group of medical personnel followed suit. Sergeant Leslie Hayden retrieved a robe from the closet, dressed Alice, and guided her to the guest bedroom, gesturing for me to follow. "Stay here. Don't leave, but keep out of the way," she directed. I retreated to the kitchen, scanning the surroundings, using a small computer from my desk drawer. I transferred the video from Green's phone and backed up its contents, sending the video to my office via email. I powered down the phone and left it on Alice's desk. From the kitchen entrance, I observed as the paramedics transported Green out the front door, loaded him into the ambulance, and sped away. An unfamiliar policewoman guided Alice to the living room, keeping her apart from me. Alice walked with her head down, clad in a robe and sneakers. Sergeant Hayden joined me in the kitchen, accompanied by the plainclothes detective, an older, slender man named John Dempster. She introduced him, though we were already acquainted. While my legal focus had shifted to civil matters, I had previously handled criminal defense cases. Collaborating with Detective Dempster, I held him in high regard and felt we had a good rapport. "Hi, I'm sorry for what occurred. Do you recognize the person you struck?" Dempster asked. "My wife's boss, Simon Green." "Do you have any details about his residence?" "We have his belongings, sports gear and credit card, but no ID." "I don't know much about him, John. Last I heard, he was married with kids in school maybe a year ago. Was there any indication of a romantic involvement between him and your wife?" "Not until today." "Could you recount the events leading up to the incident?" I recounted everything, from my decision to go for a stress-relieving run to the moment I dialed emergency, leaving no detail out. I had no motive for this. "Did you recognize Green when you were outside?" "No. It wasn't until he got out of bed that I realized who he was." "You struck him on the rear?" "Yeah. I didn't intend to cause serious damage, but I wanted him away from my wife, no matter her wishes." "But then you strike him again. Why?" "As I mentioned, he threatened to take the baton and attack me with it." Then he charged at me with a roar. Roared? Yeah, I guess he was trying to intimidate me. It worked. I aimed lower, not at his forehead. He must have ducked or lowered his head. All right, your wife isn't implicated. We're testing her for medications. Once she's lucid, she should corroborate your account. You know, John, this phone belonged to Green. He likely recorded the encounter. The struggle might be captured on video. Why is it here? I used it to call emergency, then left it open when I went outside. Dempster had a crime scene tech answer it. I inquired about Alice's fate. Not certain. Let's check with Sergeant Hayden. We entered the living room, where Alice sat with an officer and a medic. Dempster asked the medic, "What's up with Mrs. Jenkins?" "We're taking her to the county hospital for precaution, as she seems in shock. Vital signs are stable." I gazed at Alice, and in that instant, our eyes met. A tear trickled down her right cheek. "I'm so sorry, Timmy," she murmured. Then she appeared to drift back into a trance. "Alice! Alice!" I felt a twinge of frustration as she disconnected once more. A short while later, she was transported by ambulance. I changed into clothes from the basement and trailed behind in our car. The police were inside the house, assuring me they would secure it or leave someone behind. I phoned Alice's parents, who resided in a neighboring state about 2 hours away, giving them a brief overview and promising to update them from the hospital. Alice and I tied the knot when she was fresh out of college at 21, while I was still a year away from graduating law school. She swiftly secured a position at Simon Green's insurance firm, where she steadily climbed the ranks from clerk to administrative assistant in his department, which dealt with housing and automobiles. I accompanied her to company gatherings and never observed any hint of impropriety between them. It marked my first encounter with the Green family. She had been with the company for over 6 years now, and I believed our marriage was solid, until today. While I harbored little doubt that any interaction between them had been consensual, unless he somehow dazed her, this incident would likely spell the end of our marriage. Given the circumstances, I struggled to comprehend how he could have dazed her. There simply hadn't been enough time. I assumed she was awaiting him, likely unclothed, and she had left the back door ajar. I pondered how frequently this had occurred. I adored Alice. She possessed beauty, cheerfulness, and kindness. Our lovemaking life was fulfilling, even amid busy schedules, particularly on weekends. With my shift away from criminal trials, my workload became more predictable. I couldn't comprehend what I had witnessed. While Green was physically larger, today's events suggested otherwise, at least in crucial aspects. Yet, I only caught a glimpse. Who can say for sure? At the hospital, Simon Green's wife was in the ER. Though I recognized her, she seemed oblivious to me. I left things as they were and inquired about Alice. Granted permission, I returned to her room, where she slept. I gazed at her, feeling lost. I struggled to fathom her actions and their impact on us. I felt a profound need to grasp the events before making tough decisions. A female doctor in a white robe entered the room. "I'm Dr. Moore. Are you her husband?" I nodded. "What's her condition?" "She experienced mental trauma resulting in a shock-induced loss of consciousness. Once she wakes, she's likely to regain normalcy." "When might that be?" "Possibly 3 to 4 hours, depending on the dosage." "Thank you. I'll stay here." As she prepared to depart, I halted her. "What about Simon Green? How is he?" "Any relation?" "No, just an acquaintance. Unfortunately, he's in a medically induced coma due to a severe head injury." With that, she left. I mulled over Green's fate, initially believing I'd caused his demise, but now uncertain. I phoned Alice's parents and relayed what I had learned. They contemplated visiting, but I dissuaded them, explaining that Alice and I needed to address the situation, likely involving her affair with her boss. Janie Carson, Alice's mother, expressed concern, noting Alice's recent change in demeanor. She implored me to give Alice a chance to explain. "I'll do that, I promise," I replied, though it didn't seem to help much. "We'll just have to wait and see." Seeking out Mrs. Green, I located her in the ICU waiting area. "Hello, Mrs. Green." "Yes, do you have something to say?" "No, ma'am. I'm Tim Jenkins. My wife Alice works at your husband's company." It appeared they were acquainted. She was tall, slender, with brown hair, in her early 30s. "Acquainted?" "Yes, they were discovered together, unclothed in my bedroom this morning, engaged in such closeness." "Ah, you're the one who struck him?" She paused. "Yes, apologies. Well, not really." She continued. "Simon has been acting oddly lately. He's neglected his usual activities citing work. I suspect he was preoccupied with your wife. Well, I can't confirm until now. They seem to have established a routine." "What did the doctors say about his condition?" "They were non-committal. Surgery may be on the horizon." "Well, best of luck to you. Will you be taking your children?" "They're with my parents. They're aware he's in the hospital. Nothing out of the ordinary anymore." I stepped outside to catch some fresh air, hoping to clear my mind a bit. I resolved to withhold any decisions until I heard from Alice. After an hour, I returned indoors to find Alice still in the same area of the emergency room, concealed behind a curtain. Upon entering, she stirred but remained asleep. Taking a seat, I drifted off momentarily. I awoke to her stirring again, emitting faint moans. Her eyes fluttered open briefly before closing once more, accompanied by more moans. I rushed to summon help, spotting Dr. Moore at the nurse's station and signaling to her. She swiftly approached, observing Alice's condition. "It appears she's awakening, though I'm unsure if my presence is warranted." Just then, Alice lost consciousness again. "Please wait here," Dr. Moore instructed. She entered the enclosure and I could only hear their exchange from outside. "How are you feeling, Alice? Can you speak?" Alice responded weakly. God, I'm sorry. Alice, we need you fully conscious. You must acknowledge the situation and move forward. Detachment can't persist. We'll discharge you this afternoon, perhaps in 2 hours." "Where's Tim?" He was here earlier but thought you might respond better if he stepped out, though he's nearby. I wonder how long this will last. I messed up badly. And Simon, how is he? Tim hit him. We're unsure of his condition. He might require surgery. Damn, I warned him against taking risks. It was a gamble. He lost. Maybe I will too. Perhaps you should talk to Tim. I can find him, or it can wait until you're home. I drew back the curtain and entered. Alice, I'll take you home soon, hopefully. Okay, thank you. I'm really sorry. We'll talk. Turning to Dr. Moore, I inquired, when can we leave? Right away. I'll handle the paperwork and provide medical attire. With that, she departed. Alice murmured, I'm sorry, Timmy, sorry. It's not a big deal. You have to understand, we'll discuss it when we're home. As Dr. Moore presented her with a medical form, I stepped out while she changed. She seemed to interpret my departure as a rejection, and, in a way, it was. I had no inclination to witness her undressed, perhaps ever again. They wheeled her out in a wheelchair as I pulled the car up to the exit. She rose and entered the vehicle. We shared no words during the 10-minute drive, though tears streamed down her face. She remained silent. Upon arriving home, I unlocked the front door, and we stepped into what used to be our joyful abode. No police were present, and downstairs was relatively tidy. Alice settled into the rocking chair in the living room. I'll quickly check upstairs, be right back. I ascended the stairs to find chaos. Our bedroom bore the brunt, with a section of carpet removed where green had fallen. The bed lay stripped to the mattress, drawers pulled but not fully shut. I resolved to tidy up later. Other rooms appeared undisturbed, except for the bathroom, where fingerprint powder lingered. The prospect of conversing with Alice didn't appeal to me. I phoned her parents, informing them of her return. They breathed a sigh of relief but inquired about visiting. Uncertain, I clenched my teeth and descended the stairs. Would you like anything? Coffee? Water? Alice met my gaze but declined. Sitting opposite her on the sofa, we remained about 6 feet apart, silently facing each other. What happened, Alice? I thought everything was okay. It's complicated, Timmy. I've been working for Simon all these years. I've always respected him. No, it's more than that. Sometimes he made flirtatious remarks about my appearance. He started getting more touchy, placing his hand on my arm or shoulder. It caught me off guard. Then he asked me out to lunch, just the two of us. But didn't you find it odd, his sudden change in behavior? Didn't it strike you as strange? Maybe a little. She looked down. I was flattered, and he's attractive. I found myself intrigued. It took me a while to acknowledge it. So you realized he was trying to seduce you. And what did you decide? I wanted to see where it would lead. She buried her face in her hands before looking up again. And then, at that point, I knew we were in trouble. It wasn't a case of being tricked or dazed. I wanted it. We went to dinner. I asked him why he was pursuing me now after all this time. He said he'd always desired me but suppressed it. Those were his words. Tim, why? What's wrong with me that you were open to him? You're fine, Timmy. He claimed he wanted me more than you, that I was routine to you but exciting and new to him. Just the thought of it turned me on. Why didn't you talk to me about this? What could I have said? I'm considering cheating for some excitement. It never crossed my mind. How many times did you two have lovemaking? Not once. Today was supposed to be the first and only time. But then you showed up. I was terrified when I saw you, the look on your face. After you dealt with him. It wasn't anger or hatred. It was the same as always. A quick glance. Then you struck him with the baton. I figured the cop should have spoken to her first. Screw them. I had no choice. He charged at me. I saw it, but it happened so fast and ended so abruptly. Alice, I don't buy that this was the first time. I caught him sneaking in through the back door. It wasn't locked, and it didn't take me long to get inside and upstairs. But there you both were, undressed. He was inches away from having lovemaking with you. You wanted it too, so I think this isn't your first rodeo. No, Tim. Simon and I kissed in his car 2 days ago. We flirted, but I stopped him from going further. I suggested he could come over after you left for work. It all seems so improbable. Think about it. If you saw what I saw, what would you believe? Oh, you have to trust me. Or maybe not. I just don't know how to make you believe me. And now I'll never be able to trust what you say. What should I do, Alice? I love you, but I don't like Simon. He made you want him. How? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. How could you think this of me? He's forceful. He says what he wants. He wanted me, and apparently, I wanted him too. Alice, I need time to process all this. If I acted on my feelings now, we'd be headed for divorce. I can't erase what I saw. Okay, she replied, tears streaming down her face. But please remember, I love you. I'm so sorry you're hurting. She said it through sobs, but I remained silent. The woman I loved would never do this. You're not her, I finally said, unable to contain my bitterness. Maybe you're similar, maybe not. I feel like our entire life together has been a lie. The only question is, how much of a lie? I stood up and left, heading upstairs to our home office. I began examining the contents of Green's phone. Alice's phone had received numerous calls from him over the past 2 months, all in the evenings. No need to call during work hours. There were also texts discussing lunch. They seemed to dine together about twice a week for 5 weeks. Since Alice worked from home 3 days a week, this meant she had lunch with Green every day she went into the office. I decided to watch the video. It all began when he followed Alice upstairs, her in a short robe. She stepped into the bedroom and promptly flung it off onto the floor. The video momentarily flickered as he positioned the phone on the dresser, focusing it toward the bed. You look stunning, Alice, just as I always envisioned, he remarked. Thank you, Sai, she replied. Seated on the bed, he shed his shorts and shirt eagerly. "I need you right now," he asserted forcefully. Alice reclined on her back, inviting him forward. "All right, let's do this. I want it too," she encouraged. He leaped onto the bed, and that's when I burst through the door and struck him. The audio on the video captured a resounding slap followed by his cry. I watched until I grabbed the phone to dial emergency. After viewing the video, I couldn't be certain if Alice was truthful about it. Being their first encounter, perhaps. But undoubtedly, she anticipated being engaged physically with Green. Maybe it would indeed be a one-time occurrence, as she claimed. Yet I harbored doubts. After all, he was her boss. I returned to the living room and informed Alice that I needed to return to work to wrap up things at the office. By then, it was already past 3 in the afternoon. I jogged back, feeling less concerned about Alice's feelings and more consumed by anger. I halted my tasks to research divorce laws in our state. Infidelity was grounds for divorce, although it was rarely invoked. It could be pursued after 6 months of separation with a signed separation and property agreement. However, if one party refused to sign, the process could drag on, possibly for 18 months. I wasn't certain about divorcing Alice, but I was definite about seeking separation. I drafted an agreement outlining our separation terms. We would live apart, manage our finances separately, with each responsible for their own expenses. We agreed to refrain from any carnal relations between us, and, notably, pledged not to engage in carnal activity with others. Violation of this clause would grant the other party the freedom to proceed with divorce swiftly. I printed 3 copies and walked home. Alice was cooking dinner, a simple meal of spaghetti with meat sauce and salad. She wore a tracksuit, no makeup, and looked at me shyly, barefoot. "It smells great," I remarked. "Thanks. Need any help?" she offered. "I've got it covered, but if you want carrots in the salad, they're in the fridge." Tim chopped some carrots and added them to the bowl. They ate quietly, accompanied by red wine. Afterward, they washed the dishes together. "Let's talk in the living room," Tim suggested, noticing Alice's apprehension. They moved to the living room, where Alice spoke softly. "Tim, I want to reiterate how sorry I am. I'm trying to comprehend my mistakes. I've decided to seek professional help. Everything's okay, but I believe we need to separate. I'll find an apartment nearby. You can stay here. I don't feel comfortable staying here." "Are you certain?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Now, I feel so guilty. Do you want a divorce? Are we parting ways?" This seems like a step in that direction. However, I haven't made a final decision. I just felt the need for some space to think. That's why I drafted a separation agreement. I handed it to Alice, who read it through, tears streaming down her face, silent tears. "I've already signed it," she said, looking up at me. "Can we wait a few days before finalizing this so I can arrange for my mom to come here?" "Well, I can wait a bit. Let's agree on it. Why don't you take some time and let me know?" "Tim, I'm serious about what I said. I'm seeking counseling. Perhaps you could join if the therapist suggests it." "Maybe. I still love you, Alice, but I'm confused. And incredibly angry. It feels like I'll never be the same." "Me too, but you did it, Tim." Her voice cracked. "The person I thought you were, you're not. You got caught, but you're still the same person. You're just not who I thought you were. Not the woman I loved." With that, she burst into tears, and I made no move to console her. The woman I loved would never do this. "You're not her. Maybe you're similar, maybe not. I feel like our entire life together has been a lie. The only question is how much of a lie." I headed upstairs, gathered my essentials from the master bedroom, enough to last the next day, and relocated to the guest room. The following day was a work day, and I barely slept. Rising early, I dressed and headed to work. I stepped out around 9 a.m. to grab a McMuffin. Surprisingly, I managed to focus on work, sending out several emails and jotting down notes in the judge's office. This is possible remains uncertain to me. However, I'm certain that I will never forget what I heard, particularly what I witnessed on the video. If you'd like, I can email you a copy. "God, Tim," she began to sob. "I didn't intend to be harsh. I only wanted you to understand what I saw. Perhaps one day you'll forgive me for intruding." With that, she rushed away, ascending the stairs. I tidied everything up and secured a studio apartment with a lovely view of the running track in a small park situated midway between my workplace and our former home. It lacked furnishings. I arranged for a double bed, sofas, and armchairs to be delivered, albeit the expenses were burdensome yet necessary. Alice's mother was in the kitchen and opened the door. Upon seeing me, she said, "Hey Tim, is Alice here? She's out. She'll be back soon." "Look, Tess, Alice is really confused about everything. Have you made any decisions?" "I just wanted to talk to Alice." "Tess, where'd she go?" Tess seemed a bit flustered. "She's with a friend." "Tess, you're not fooling anyone. Or who's the friend? Did she stay here or somewhere else?" "Tim, she wasn't doing well. A friend came by and they went out to eat." "Tess, was that dinner last night? You can't keep this from me." I noticed she was blocking the kitchen door on purpose. I headed toward the front door, and a new Mustang pulled up, driven by a blonde guy. He got out, circled the car, and opened the passenger door for Alice, who looked ready for a date. I rushed over. "Hey Alice, I came to see you." She spun around, shocked. The guy appeared uneasy and concerned. "Timmy, this is James from work. He drove me last night." I remained composed, but there was an edge to my voice that seemed to unsettle them both. James started to retreat. "Look man, I don't want any trouble. I was just trying to help. Cut the act. You got what you wanted. Stick around, and you'll get more than you bargained for." He was my height and younger, and I noticed him stand taller, clearly upset. Alice yelled, "Stop, just stop, James. It's time for you to go." "Sure thing, Alice," he replied, with emphasis on you. He chuckled, quickly got back in his car, and drove off. I looked at Alice. "You didn't even last a week without breaking the agreement about no lovemaking. I'll bring this up when the papers are ready for you to be served." "Tim, I'm sorry. I was vulnerable and knew we were broken up, but I do love you, even if it doesn't seem like it. You just needed some sex, didn't you? What happened to you? We don't need to talk anymore. Get a lawyer." I turned and walked away, taking the path around the back to go home. It was a straightforward decision, though I was taken aback. We'd been together a long time without any of this. She was attractive, and men probably noticed her often. I wondered why she'd started giving in to them now. Heading back to my room, I decided it might always remain a mystery, or maybe I'd ask her mom. I managed to catch Tess alone about a week after my last visit. I slipped into the house when Alice was likely at work and knocked on the patio door. Tess let me in. Why are you here, Tim? I wanted to understand what happened if possible. We were doing great and then she changed. Any idea why? Perhaps she struggled with self-esteem growing up. She wasn't seen as attractive by boys throughout high school. She was flat-chested and thin. Her two friends developed faster, becoming popular cheerleaders. Alice lagged behind in popularity and drifted from them. But at 17 she changed, filled out in all the right places, and her acne cleared up. Suddenly boys noticed her. She went to prom with a football player, lost her virginity at 18, and that summer was wild, going out with friends and boyfriends. I worried about pregnancy, but she used birth control as far as I know. She stayed healthy. I explained, however, in college when we met, she didn't seem overly eager sexually. She seemed normal, but was more experienced than me. She was clear about her likes and desires. Since we started dating, she's been faithful. Tess paused, then asked, "You were discussing having children?" "Yes, we plan to start a family, but that's over now." Maybe she feared that getting pregnant would make her less appealing to men. I think she reached out to her boss because he was pursuing her, and she needed reassurance. That's my best guess. But what about the guy with the Mustang? Same reason. A young guy with a fancy car made her feel desired. But she already knew that. She might not end up married or have children for me. Yes, don't know. Maybe she was just craving excitement. How long will you be around? Not too long. Take care, Tess. I departed. The divorce proceeded smoothly. Alice moved out of our rented place to another apartment across town, closer to her job. We lost touch after the divorce hearing. As we were leaving the courthouse, Alice approached me. "Let's grab lunch, Tim," she said. "Actually, I'll treat. There's something I need to say." All right. We chose Red Lobster. I had an appetizer, she had soup, and she looked at me after we ordered. "Tim, I messed up. I've seen a therapist. She thinks I was scared of having kids, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just not cut out for commitment. I was really attracted to Simon. Sorry, I might never understand myself. What happened to him anyway? I never heard anything after that. He's back to working part-time, using a cane in his right hand sparingly, and his wife left him. Good for her. That seems harsh. You really messed up his life. You and he messed up mine too. But maybe not as badly as you messed up your own life. By the way, how are you?" I miss our life together. Now I can be as sexually active as I want with most guys I meet, and I really enjoy it. It gets me excited and eager. I feel the need to act on it. I'm not sure why this urge has returned. Simon reminded me of the guy from prom who took my virginity. Maybe I wanted to relive those youthful times. And now you can enjoy them. You can seek pleasure in lovemaking. That's harsh, but she chuckled. It wasn't meant to be funny, but I saw the irony and laughed along. She added, "A new guy always gets me going." Pausing, she continued, "But honestly, I miss our family life." "I see you two need some time alone," Gwen said, looking at me. "Come back later, big guy." Alice grabbed my hand, shooting Gwen an annoyed look, and pulled me outside. Her apartment was a short walk away. We entered the building, took the elevator up, and as soon as the doors closed, Alice kissed me passionately, pressing me against the wall. She ran her hands over me. "This is going to be amazing, Tim," she whispered. "Okay." I was out of breath. The elevator door opened to reveal two women as Alice and I stepped out. They looked shocked. We hurried past. One greeted, "Hey, Alice." Alice didn't respond. She ushered me into her apartment, and I nearly tripped over an end table. We quickly undressed. Stepping back, she scanned me, and I did the same. She licked her lips. "I told you I'd pin you down," she teased. Our encounter was brief but intense. We both felt satisfied afterward. We lay together, catching our breath. Maybe I should have considered how strange it was to climax on the day of our divorce, but that's for later. Alice mused, sitting up and looking at me. "That was the best lovemaking we've ever had. The best I've ever had. I should have left you sooner." I felt aroused again. We had passionate, prolonged lovemaking. She reached climax multiple times, just like the best moments in our marriage. Then I reached my peak, which was as intense and satisfying as the first time. This time, I rolled away from her. I thought staying would lead to more activity, potentially damaging my health. The divorce was finalized that morning, and Alice and I continued our activities until late at night. We had a light meal. I suggested returning to Red Lobster, but she declined, saying we had soup in the fridge. We didn't bother dressing to eat. After finishing her cake, she looked at me. "Should we talk or keep going?" Without hesitation, I stood, took her hand, and said, "Let's go." We repeated this several times, all of which were incredible. Some encounters were slow, some intense. We both knew each other's triggers. Sometimes it felt like a battle to see who could make the other give in. Neither of us won, but it was thrilling. The next morning, we were engaged physically again before she made breakfast. As we ate, I felt we needed to discuss our situation. "Alice, I hope we can maintain this," I said. "Timmy, I realize now that marrying was a mistake," she responded. "I tried to keep my promise to be faithful, but I've learned I can't. That doesn't mean I want you out of my life." I wasn't joking when I referenced the James Taylor song. "But there will come a time, Alice, when I'll want to settle down and have kids. Maybe that's what led you to other men." "So? I enjoy being with you sexually. You're the best, and you'll likely remain the best I've ever had. I believe we could continue this until one of us decides to stop." She concurred. Over the weekend, we stayed in bed, taking short breaks only to eat, shower, and use the bathroom. On Saturday afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Alice donned her robe and answered it. It was the woman from the elevator, Maisie. She was older but looked good. "Alice, I haven't seen you in a while. I just wanted to make sure you're okay," Maisie said. "I'm doing quite well, Maisie," Alice responded. "Very well, actually." She smiled at me and Maisie glanced over too. "I get it. Enjoy yourself. You're stunning in a chic evening dress and sandals." I prepared fried chicken and rice for dinner, and we had a good conversation. She was 25, juggling work as a model for various clothing magazines, and as a waitress. While she wasn't married, she had ended a long-term relationship about 10 months prior. At that time, I was 34, working at a successful law firm and living independently with a good car. I had separate relationships with Alice, Maisie, and a woman from the courthouse. But I was ready for commitment and found Gwen appealing. I decided to pursue a relationship with her and see where it went. On our first night out, we agreed I'd drive her home, and she kissed me at her doorstep. While I was thrilled, she didn't immediately take things to the bedroom. As our relationship progressed, I found myself falling for her. She was both attractive and intelligent, and I believed she felt the same way about me. By our third date, we became engaged physically. It was a beautiful experience. I felt a connection, and she seemed to appreciate it. That night, I decided to end things with the other women I'd been seeing. A few weeks later, after a particularly intense intimate encounter with Gwen, she revealed she enjoys rougher experiences at times, something we both liked, as do many others, I assumed. Gwen, I've shared about my past marriage and its issues, but now I think I'm in love with you, I admitted. I've stopped seeing other women. I'm glad to hear that. Since meeting you, you're the only guy I've dated. I haven't even kissed anyone else. I really love you, Tim, but I'm concerned about your trust issues regarding fidelity. Will you always have doubts about me? If I commit to being only with you, I'll stick to it, she asked. I'd be dishonest if I said I wasn't concerned. But if you assure me, I'll do everything I can to address my trust issues. All right, it's a deal. I'll remain faithful, and you will too. That works, I agreed. 2 weeks later, I proposed, and we tied the knot 3 months after that. While her parents lived in Chicago, we chose to have the ceremony locally. It was modest. I invited Alice and Maisie. I introduced Gwen to Alice shortly after proposing. Alice was cordial, but I could tell she felt a bit downcast. Our connection wasn't based on love, but I knew she'd miss our intimate moments. I would have felt the same way. Gwen and I chose the Bahamas for our honeymoon, which was fantastic. Afterward, we moved into my apartment, and things went smoothly. We soon decided to start a family, and were blessed with 2 children in 3 years, Thomas and Eileen. I became a partner at my firm, and purchased a house in a nearby suburb. I stayed in touch with Alice, not the one I'd been intimate with. She married a coworker named Larry Gibson, a year after Gwen, and I tied the knot. He was successful, and she had 2 sons, Lawrence and Raymond. They relocated near Gwen and me, and the 4 of us often crossed paths. Our kids even attended the same preschool. Gwen and Alice became friends, though Larry seemed wary of me. I sensed he doubted my intentions around Alice, and he was correct. There was still an attraction between us. Gwen recognized it too, but trusted me completely, even growing to trust Alice not to encroach on our relationship. However, Larry, who sometimes noticed the chemistry between Alice and me, remained uneasy. Despite this, Larry and I shared interests, particularly baseball. We played together on a men's team in an old-timers league and excelled. We also had season tickets for MLB games, both being avid fans. Occasionally, Larry and I attended games together. One day, while waiting to exit the garage at Gems Park, I decided to have a candid conversation with him about my past relationship with Alice. After the game, I approached Larry. I want to be clear, I'll never have a physical relationship with Alice again. We're both married now. I can see this bothers you, I admitted. Tim, that's a direct way to put it. We could be good friends if you trusted Alice and me, but it's clear you two still have lingering feelings, he replied frankly. There's a history, sure, we were compatible. But I promise you, and I'm sure Alice has said the same, we need to put this behind us. Tim, whenever I see you two together, like at the club dance last month, it seems like you shared some incredible moments, he said. Sometimes I wonder who she's thinking of when we're intimate, me, you, or some movie star, he added. Do you ever think of her when you're with Gwen? He asked. Not usually, but I won't deny she crosses my mind. We had some great times, maybe even better ones than I've had since, I confessed. That's what truly concerns me, Larry said. Larry, I see your point. I hadn't thought of it that way. Thanks for sharing, I responded, making our conversation easier for all involved. However, I wasn't entirely truthful. The closeness I had with Alice post-divorce was unparalleled. It still crosses my mind, especially when I see her, and I suspect she feels the same. Maybe if we're both in our 80s and circumstances change, we'll see if we can rekindle that.